Hey, my name is Ramirez. This is Frog Bear. You can also call me Rami. Today's episode is fitness industry shoes. Now, I want to preface this with a bit of a story, right? I ran the LA Marathon when I was in high school as a program called Students Run LA. This was, I think I started my first race my junior year, and I also participated during my senior year. But during my senior year, I suffered a lower back injury. For many years, I did not know how, right? Because when I went to get my X-rays, when I went to get my MRIs, and when I went to a professional chiropractor, they were all kind of baffled. How did someone as young as you, right? Because I was 18. How does someone as young as you incur this injury? And I'm not trying to blame shoes. I'm not trying to blame running. Essentially, I discovered that one of the biggest things that people don't understand about lower back problems is if you have no ass, you're more than likely to suffer a lower back injury. Because there are strategic structural muscles that exist in the gluteus maximus region and in the abdominal region. And if you do not have these muscles developed well enough, you could incur a variety of different problems that relate to your lower back, abdominal, and spinal. So this is kind of a video showing, or at least me describing, something that I had to learn in the process of my recovery. And this kind of all started around the same time that I also started losing weight. So I did extensive research into understanding how I ended up in the situation that I was in and why that occurred. And that's my explanation at the beginning, is what I found out. Now, one of the videos that I had that helped me and assisted me in understanding all this was, I did not open it. Wow. Is this video, running shoes. Now, before I play it,
sports shoe sales, right?
Sports shoe. I just want to remind everybody that me personally, I've quickly learned that this industry have no interest in telling you the truth. They have no interest in selling you a product that is actually meaningful or useful to you as a person. They only care about one thing, and that's the bottom dollar. How much money can I make off of you? The fitness has become an industry. With everything that I've learned about health, exercising, certain aspects of recovery, you'll realize very quickly that everything that you're recommended in this industry doesn't necessarily work, and it's not a catch-22 all. So this is a great example of this.
Shoe sales are a $13 billion business in this country alone, and the vast majority of those 350 million or so pair that are sold every year are what you and I might call running shoes. Now, whether they're made by Nike, Adidas, New Balance, Under Armour, or whatever, they all have, in recent years, been offered with ever-increasing amounts of padding, cushioning, and support. Yet today, a growing number of running enthusiasts are turning to shoes with little or no padding at all, and some are even running barefoot. To explain why, here's our Bernard Gold.
So I also don't want to suggest that like you have to run barefoot and barefoot's the only way to go or anything like that.
Nice and easy.
In reality, what I'm saying is we were lied to. The industry has it's not like anybody did research on this. It's not like anybody was incentivized into selling you the best product possible for shoes. So I don't want to say that these are a den of vipers or that they want to damage you and they want to make sure that you're unhealthy. I'm not saying that in this situation. I'm just saying that with the way that the shoe developed and with the way things progressed, nobody really ever asked the question if the shoes that we have were detrimental to our health or were beneficial to our health. In reality, I just think that over time we were just looking for something that protected our feet from earth.
Like they actually cause the damage.
According to McDougall, the problem started in 1972 when Nike invented the modern running shoe with a comfortable cushion in the heel.
Unfortunately, you have the law of unintended consequences. You put that little cushion under there and you're slamming down, but look what happens to your leg. This knee, instead of flexing backward, nice and easy, is now locked out and vulnerable. Secondly, you create this straight line for all that impact to run up your leg and slam into every single joint.
And the result is what?
Knee problems, ankle problems, heel problems, foot problems, hip problems, back problems, headaches and bad backs.
So this guy who wrote the book called Born to Run, he studied this Mexican tribe.
Constantly getting hurt. And then I discovered that there are people that can run hundreds of miles at a time and never get hurt. And that's what I wanted to find out. What are these guys doing that we're not doing? And the difference is what's on their feet.
What's on their feet?
Almost nothing.
He's talking about a tribe of Indians, the Ramirez, who live in a remote, desolate part of Mexico. So McDougall set out to find them. And what he discovered were a people lost in time.
They've basically been there untouched for thousands of years.
Now, something that isn't also explained, one of the reasons why this tribe does this this running ritual is because the empire of old in Mexico, they used to have a very sophisticated delivery system where they had runners in strategic locations, and if the empire needed to send a message to northern Mexico or southern Mexico, they would hand over the message to the runner. That runner would then catch up to the other runner. That runner would then catch up to the other runner, and so forth and so forth. And it was actually a pretty efficient way for them to deliver messages all through northern to southern Mexico.
And
The next part that I wanted to show actually was it wasn't just that, because we also have, in this report, he also talks to a different professor too.
shoes. That the less shoe, the better.
Nice theory, but that's all it was. Except Daniel Lieberman, a professor at Harvard who teaches human evolutionary biology, was making his own trip back in time, this one to the plains of Kenya, to try to figure out why people from this poor, undeveloped place dominate so many of the world's long-distance races.
And it's not even just long distance races. When I was in high school, and you're in one of these marathons, there's a portion of runners that are put at the front, and these are the creme of the creme. Like, these are the top runners. These are the people who compete for the money that is offered at this LA marathon. Their times will usually range from, I think it was like 2 to 3, 4 hours. I don't even actually remember very well. It's been years since I've looked at the stats. But when I looked at who were the champions consecutive of the years that I went and the years prior to me, a lot of them were Nigerian. Oops, wrong button.
And what he found there was strikingly similar to what McDougall had found in Mexico.
We went to a part of Africa where people have never worn shoes in their lives, these kids, because there's it's a very rural part of Africa.
And they run.
Oh my God, they run. They're the best runners in the world. No shoes.
No shoes at all.
They don't have shoes.
That part was no mystery. Lots of people knew that. But what Lieberman learned from videotaping the barefoot runners of Kenya was startling. First, he discovered that runner after runner landed on the front of their feet, unlike most runners who wear high-tech running shoes and land like this, squarely on the heel, where the shoe is thickly cushioned. Then he ran a few tests and found something counterintuitive.
So again, nobody knew this. Nobody looked at the science of how to run or how to walk or how to do any of this. This is one of those things that just naturally occurred where we developed the shoe and we never studied it or looked at it in a meaningful way to understand that if this was healthy for us, conducive, destructive, or anything.
It turns out that runners who hit the ground with their heel on all that cushioning are shocking their body far more than those Kenyans who are hitting the ground the natural way, on the front of the foot, with no artificial padding at all.
When you heel strike, a large percentage of your body comes to a dead stop all at once, right? The weight of your foot plus your lower leg stop all of a sudden, like that. So you hit the ground with a certain amount of force, and the ground hits you with the same amount of force. So what barefoot people do is they land on the ball of the foot, just in front of the arch, right here.
I also want to I remember showing this, when he said this, I reminded myself of when I was discovering all this and I was telling my family, because I like sharing information, even though at this point nobody likes to hear me and I have to start a YouTube channel. But I remember when I showed this video to my brother-in-law because he was in the garage with me. He was like, whoa, pause that. And he looked at me and he's like, so you're telling me that when I was in school and they were telling us heel to toe, that was wrong? And that's when I was like, well, what do you mean? That's what they taught you in... Yeah, he's like, yeah, that's what they taught us in PE. And he was a track runner. Like, he's super tall and has long legs. So, of course, that the coach would look at him and be like, yo, you look like a good person for running. And that's what... at least he was from the 80s, right? At least he was in school during the 80s. So I'd assume that was a popular thing that was being taught. I'm not too sure. But, again, it goes into this whole thing of... I don't think anybody knew.
And they land right there, and then the heel comes down.
That's the natural way.
That's a completely natural, normal, barefoot way to run. And the reason it's comfortable is that when you land like that...
It's not the barefoot way to run. It's how people naturally ran for hundreds of years before we introduced the shoe, or at least rubber synthetic soles.
Much less of your body comes to a dead stop.
Dr. Lieberman says that for 2 million years, this is the way most people ran. But everything changed that day in 1972 when the modern running shoe was born. A major blow, Chris McDougall says, to the human foot and to human evolution.
What kind of expert are you? I mean, you're not a scientist. You're not a doctor.
The science is settled, my boy.
I believe that my legs are better wear tested by 2 million years of evolution than they are by 20 years of mad scientists playing around.
But the new shoes were comfortable and looked great and were marketed with the best ads money could buy.
And by the way, as it is right now, there are a lot of barefoot shoes that look stylish. Like I have a pair of boots, I have these pair of tennis shoes. And I already know a few other companies. I like Glems. I know there's a few other companies that also sell barefoot shoes that are stylized to look more fashionable, I guess.
So it didn't take long before a full-blown arms race for the feet was underway. There was more padding, more technology, more stuff for more money.
Whoa. You're telling me that me pumping my shoes doesn't do anything, my boy? No, my boy. It gave me more hops, my boy. All right, I could jump higher.
We have a $250 sneaker with a computer chip,
Right.
embedded in the shoe. What do you make of that?
It's junk. It's overpriced, useless junk.
It must do something.
Yeah, it makes a lot of money.
A lot of money, right? Now, let's use one of my favorite examples, Michael Jordan, right? Allegedly a big gambler, also allegedly not a very big fan of the inner youth. I'm not sure if anybody knows that, but when he developed his shoe, or at least when he started selling his shoe, he wanted to only market it towards one side of the aisle. He did not want to market it and or sell it to the inner city youth, because he wanted his brand to be, I don't know what, like some bougie shit or something. And that's it's at the end of the day, that's exactly what he got. But I would say it's far different for basketball shoes, because they do offer you heel support, right? Because not all shoes do that. But that's neither here nor there.
You know, Bernie, there's a shoe out now that is designed to adjust to women's hormonal cycles, so that during their menstrual cycles...
No, you're making this up.
Stop it. You're not a scientist. You're not a real researcher.
Arch support rises and lowers depending on the woman's menstrual cycle, because women have unique needs, and therefore they need a unique shoe to accommodate their needs. I know, I wish I was making this stuff up.
We checked. He's not making it up. This is the shoe that supposedly helps women run during their menstrual cycle.
So we have science that gives you the ability to make a shoe like this, but we don't have science that sells a healthy shoe. Now, again, I'm not saying that the industry is trying to do anything, but when this report came out, what year was this? Running. I don't know. This report looks like it came out around 2012. Mainly because that was the first time ever in my life that I saw one of those shoes with the toes. Dude, that freaked me out. I was like, why would you want to buy shoes with toes? Why would you want to show your toes? Like, why would you want to give your little toe like a little rubber sock? Sorry.
That's all I know and all I want to know. But it does raise a question, one I asked Michael Pavito, who heads the running shoe department at Adidas, one of the companies that put a computer chip in their shoe.
When did it get so complicated? I mean, our ancestors were running across the plains for not 20 miles or 30. They were running
It's kind of sad for Adidas because they actually don't give them any speaking time.
100 miles.
Instead,
Whistle too, but I mean, iPods are here. It's just there's been advancements.
That depends on what you measure. There is no improved performance or Oregon injuries. But at Nike headquarters in Beaverton, Oregon, they say if running shoes don't do any good, how did so many world-class runners break so many records wearing their shoes? Jeff Pichata and Toby Hatfield are part of Nike's design and research team.
So we liken ourselves to being chefs, kind of trying a little bit of this, trying a little bit of that, but we only try it because we're hearing and listening to the athlete, and then we give it back to them and said, does this taste good?
But they never
it's kind of messed up, right? They give Adidas a little bit of time. They make them look a little bit foolish, but for Nike, we got to give them some prime time.
expected to hear what they heard a few years ago from a coach of one of America's top college track teams, a team sponsored by Nike.
A team sponsored by Nike. Right? This was also a time where I don't know what people think about the whole college basketball league thing, not getting paid, but at the same time, universities incentivizing certain kids to go to their university by giving them certain things and certain privileges. Really weird stuff. I don't know if anybody knew that.
He happened to just tell us. I don't know scientifically, but I just know that when I take your shoes off and we do a bit more barefoot training, that I think their feet are stronger. And if their feet are stronger, I can push them harder. If I can push them harder, their performance is that much better.
I mean, you're giving this guy free shoes, free expensive shoes. And he says to you, we're running barefoot around here.
We took that as something to learn from. We said, okay, let's listen and how can we improve it?
And just like that, after years of building thick cushioned high-tech shoes, Nike did a 180 and went the other way. They created a simpler, flexible shoe they call Nike Free, which is nothing like those shoes they've been selling us for 40 years. Their slogan? Run barefoot.
Run barefoot. Right? All of a sudden, the science has changed. The science is now settled, gentlemen. I repeat, the science is now settled. But
people that trained and ran in Nike Free.
Well, that's interesting because Nike Free most closely approximates barefoot running.
this sounds like an ad at this point. But again, I'm not trying to say
What it
anything.
wants to do. Don't try
But
to control
if you don't want to go barefoot because of the hazards of the modern world, concrete and broken glass to name a couple, McDougall says there's still a pretty good rule of thumb and foot to follow. When it comes to running, less is more.
You know, there is a lot to be said about training the intricate muscles of the foot, because this reminds me of certain training that I remember seeing the cross track team do at Humboldt University when I was there. Was they would actively tell their runners, "You got a forest in the back, go run in the forest." And there's a big difference between running on uneven terrain and just parallel terrain. And it talks about how running on uneven terrain actually gives more dynamics in the foot, because you have to account for each step that you're taking. It's far more beneficial for you to run on uneven surfaces. Can't remember why I remembered that, but it goes to show that there's
Thankfully,
still
it's
a
a
lot
very
that a lot of people don't know about running.
hopeful message. That you're born to run, that you're designed to run, that running is not this dangerous thing that we're all.
You know, he says that. I still haven't ran. I'm still kind of afraid to run. But actually, I'll just leave that here. We'll go back to this. So, again, I'm not trying to like scare people. I'm not trying to tell them that they should live their lives a certain way or that they should throw away their shoes. I'm just bringing up the fact that sometimes an industry will run forward with a design, an idea, a practice, and won't correct themselves. because they have no incentive to. A perfect example of this is the movie Reefer Madness. The only reason that movie exists is because the guy who sponsored that movie to be created was somebody who owned a paper mill, and he didn't want to switch over to hemp because he would have lost so much money that it was easier for him to slander it and to play into the race war to further induce a certain state of mind in the populace, thus creating Reefer Madness. But beyond that, it also goes to what was I going to mention too? I was going to mention something else about running. Oh, running is in terms of an exercise. Now, if you do any form of exercise, this is just a fun fact that I want to include. If you do any form of exercise, the more you overtrain, the higher your cortisol levels will rise. Now, running actually induces the highest level of cortisol levels depending on how you're training. But there's a problem with cortisol levels and if you're trying to lose weight. If you're trying to lose weight, high cortisol levels will induce your body to want to eat more. It'll kind of like kick up your appetite. But if you're not dieting and if you're not watching what you eat and you're running, you will retain a lot of that weight because you will over snack yourself in that scenario because your cortisol levels, or at least your appetite will be at a much higher level. So people like to think that, oh, I can run and lose all this weight, but in any form of exercising, it's important that you watch what you're eating because at the end of the day, the only way you get the extra pounds is when you put extra shit in your mouth. But I'll leave that here. It's a good enough video. Thanks for watching. My name is Ramirez, and you can also call me Frogbear. My Instagram page and my Telegram group name are in the description below, and I'll include a couple more resources alongside this video.